Hello and welcome to this episode of The Rest is Entertainment with me, Marina Hyde.
And me, Richard Osman. Good day to you, Marina.
Good day to you, Richard. Now, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad. It's an interesting week this week. We've got some fun stuff to talk about. We're talking about, if people have seen the story over the weekend, the book The Salt Path. If you don't know that story, I shan't give you any spoilers. We're going to be talking about...
I will tell you I'm transfixed by it.
Yes, it is quite a tale. I'll say that. We're also talking about one of the great format successes of all time, which is nowhere near any terrestrial TV channel. It's on YouTube and it's called Hot Ones. We'll be talking about the history of that and the future of that and the money that it's making.
And we're also going to be talking about the Velvet Sundown, an AI band, and the absolute sort of wild story around AI music and how an AI slop and how it's coming for absolutely all of us.
I mean, all three of these stories I think are fascinating. Yes. Genuinely, I'm excited to talk about all three of them. I'm often excited to get your take on things. All three of these, I'm very excited.
Well, I am always excited to get your take on this. So
I shouldn't say I'm often excited to get your take.
Occasionally not.
I'm always excited
Sometimes
to get your take.
Sometimes you know what I'm going to say.
Occasionally, I think, yeah. Occasionally, you don't by surprise.
Well, both of us are gripped by the tale of the Salt Path.
Now, if you haven't heard of the Salt Path, let me take you through it. It's a true story of a couple from Wales who, through no fault of their own, lose their house and become homeless. Not only that, the husband in this couple, and they're called Raynor and Moth Winn, the husband has a degenerative disease, something akin to Parkinson's. They find themselves homeless and they embark on a 630-mile walk around the southwest coast of England called the Salt Path. So it's a memoir, it's a true story. It became a massive phenomenon. Book clubs all around the country love it. It's such an incredibly inspirational story. People have really, really bought into it. It means a great deal to a huge amount of people. So much so that a movie came out a few weeks ago with Gillian Anderson playing Raynor Winn, Jason Isaacs playing Moth Winn. And it's just one of those incredibly rare success stories where a publisher picks up a small story, a true story, something that speaks to our times, something that speaks about humanity, something that speaks about human beings, and readers really, really jumped on board. This book means a great deal to a great deal of people. So just this incredible true story, strength, adversity, bad luck, just everything about life. But it turns out perhaps it was not true.
And then this weekend, a fantastic investigation in The Observer came out by the journalist Chloe Hadjimateo, but also some additional reporting by Lens on them. There's often quite a few people involved in a big team effort like this, saying that their names aren't really Raynor and Moth Winn. Their names are Sally and Tim Walker.
Walker?
Yeah, Walker. I mean, It was right there.
They turned walking into wins, that's for sure.
Yeah. That those were not the circumstances of how they lost their home. In fact, it's quite a convoluted tale, but it suggests that Sally Walker embezzled money to start with. And then, as I say, it's quite convoluted. There's a loan, there's all sorts of other things. But the embezzlement is the key part of it. And it also contains commentary from various sort of consultant neurologists who say that this diagnosis of corticobasal degeneration, you would normally expect, in fact, nobody really lives beyond 8 years, and it's an awful, awful condition. And 18 years on to be flourishing is essentially unheard of. And of course, occasionally in a blue moon, a medical miracle occurs, but there is a considerable doubt cast on the nature of that aspect of the story as well. So it's pretty much all of it. I mean, I think they did the walk.
Yes, I think, I don't even know if they did all of that. So it is this incredibly inspirational true story, which turns out it may well not be true. Can we not have nice things? This is like Captain Tom's Family all over again. But
could she not have a spa complex, Richard? No, she couldn't. She had to have it knocked down
I bet she has got one. I bet the Walkers have got one. But I cannot overestimate how much this has gone off like a bomb in the world of publishing, because this is a huge, huge, huge lead item for everyone. This has been one of the massive success stories, and publishing, you don't have all that money, and they pay for everything, these big success stories. And The Salt Path is one of those books that has paid for so many other books over the last 8 years. It is massive, and everyone in publishing is absolutely reeling this week.
All of this has been put to Raynor and Moth Winn, and in significant detail, and they've issued the following statement, which is not very detailed. They've said, the Salt Path lays bare the physical and spiritual journey Moth and I shared, an experience that transformed us completely and altered the course of our lives. This is the true story of our journey. Well, thanks for the blurb. But that does not respond even vaguely to any of the material allegations in this particular investigation. A spokeswoman for the Winns has said that the allegations made in a Sunday newspaper were highly misleading.
They are consulting lawyers.
Yet they're consulting lawyers. Clearly, this is published by Penguin Random House.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll have a lot. Well, let's start talking about it.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm published by Penguin Random House, and a bomb would have gone off there this week because
would it have gone on? You see, now I have another theory,
great.
which is that I actually think we've all heard the expression, and it means lots of different things. Where there's a hit, there's a writ.
Yes,
people often come out of the woodwork when something becomes successful. Rather like those consultant neurologists, I'd be surprised if this was the very, very first that after a book has been that successful that Penguin Random House have heard that maybe the circumstances at the start of it, certainly, that lead to the whole story taking place don't necessarily add up. I would be surprised if that's the first, because there has been online commentary, which I actually wasn't aware of, but I've gone back and I can see that it existed.
I keep, as so often in these things, you read people going, oh, this was an open secret. And I definitely don't think it was an open secret. I'd never heard before that this was fake. I hadn't really got involved in the Salt Path world. I can sort of feel that book is not for me. But people just say, oh no, we knew, and we'd be at festivals. Gillian Anderson, when they said, oh, how did you find Raynor Winn when you met her? And she went, I thought she was quite guarded. And you think, yeah, really? The two central tenets at the heart of this book, the things that make it sell a huge amount of money, the things that make it really resonate with Middle Britain and with readers across the world, are they lost their house through no fault of their own. These allegations suggest that is not the case. They lost their house because Sally Walker had embezzled money. They then borrowed from somebody else, and that person had called in the loan, and so the house no longer belonged to them. And also the ability somehow to turn back the course of an illness through communing with nature.
I mean, you have a huge responsibility. Everyone who writes about anything medical and any form of, even in the broadest terms, alternative treatments, has a huge responsibility to bear. Well, and if you're publishing anything that suggests that, then you also have a huge responsibility to bear. As I say, I saw a woman saying that my husband's got CBD, and I've lost count of the times in the last 5 years that people said, you must read this book and perhaps he should go for a long walk. And the despair that I had of understanding that's not something that he was able to do, and not quite understanding what it was that must be in this book. If you're talking about, medical things, and you're talking about what nature can do, and you're talking about, medicinal effects of things, that is a big issue, not only for the Winns, by the way, and that's their that's their business,
but for the publisher.
Yes, for the publisher, it is the medical aspect is probably the most serious aspect of it. It's interesting. I kept thinking back, and as I say, I don't know the origin story of this, but obviously she's a first-time writer, and I wonder if she perhaps glossed over, as you might do, the circumstances of the loss of the house, because it's much better to get on the walk.
Of course you would.
And they've said, and your editor would say, well, hang on, I think we really want to delve more into this, because the payoff is not so satisfying. Yeah, and also we don't see the tragedy. We've got to go really down,
because
and then we can go up.
Raynor Winn's version of the book, there is a bad guy who is an old colleague of Moth Winn's who sort of asks him to invest in something and then pulls the rug from under them and takes their house. So there's a proper bad guy at the start of the book who we're like, oh my God, you're so unlucky that happened to you. And you would think that an editor might be saying, let's find out a little bit more about that person. I think that person who is Ros Hemming's husband passed away a few years ago, and she said, Ros Hemming said, in a way, I'm sort of glad he didn't see this book ever come out, because it would have hurt him so much, the lies in it.
Well, I think it's interesting, but I do nonetheless think, what's the editing procedure there when you're saying, okay, this person did this thing to us? You're still thinking, if you're the lawyer, okay, can this person be identified? If this person can be identified, are they still alive? You're going through all of those different processes. You have to be so careful with all of these things, as we say. And you can get away with things in books that you might not be able to on TV or whatever. But if that person is dead, then even so, I think you'd have to produce, I would be, if I was publishing this book, I would require these people to produce some forms of evidence. And maybe they just said, well, we don't have anything left because we put what we had in our backpacks and we went on our walk.
Or it's too painful for us.
If over the next few days, weeks, whatever, the amount of people coming out of the woodwork because they've been emboldened by this and it's gone public to speak out, and the claims become sort of are able to be sort of fairly incontrovertibly proved to be false. What do you then do if you're Penguin Random House?
Gosh, it's a very interesting question. I think that probably you try and claw back some of the money that you've passed over. I don't know this particular contract. The contract would normally be that they have guaranteed that everything in this piece is truthful. And again, things can be highly misleading, but if something is a deliberate lie, then Penguin Random House, I guess, would have some sort of recourse. Obviously, any money you do get back in, that's got to go straight to some sort of charity. I mean, that has to, because Penguin Random House will know also that they've been remiss here. When you're involved in a book and you have that sort of fan groups around the book, how much these books mean to people, and especially with this when it's to do with illness, what this means to people. So that people are going to be very, very hurt. I suggest that there would be, on one hand, there'll be some legal issues if these things do turn out to be not true, and on the other hand, some reputational work that would need doing. And
someone's getting a new neurology wing, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll get on to more, other instances of disputed memoirs or memoirs that have been proved to be false in a minute. But as we've talked about so many times, and we're going to probably talk about in another item on this podcast, people are obsessed with authenticity in this age. They are totally obsessed. They've, as we've said, people feel that Instagram influencers or the Beckhams or whoever are mis-selling them something when it's really not that big of a deal. I have a lot of sympathy with anyone who feels lied to by this book, if the allegations in that article are correct. And by the way, the Winns / Walkers have not said they're not correct. They've just said this is a lovely uplifting story. This is our truth. Now, to some extent, all memoirs, I was thinking about this on the way in to talk to you, and I was thinking, to some extent, all memoirs are reality bending, because you're writing them at a point in that you're not writing them contemporaneously, and
usually you want to be the hero of your own memoir, one way or another.
Well, I mean, that is the tricky element of lots of them. And as the reader, you're thinking, is this what is truth? Am I getting the kind of recovered feeling as it occurred at the time? Or am I, like most things in human life, that I'm getting order is being imposed on this kind of tide of experience that happened back in the day, and a narrative is being created. So to some extent, all memoirs have those sort of things, and you leave out lots of things, and you shape a narrative. But this is likely to send the mumsnetters, the tattle-lifers, all the people who might go nuts about things like this off the dial, especially as they've loved it. It's meant such a lot. It's become this film. It's one of those inspirational stories of boomers walking somewhere, which is actually a genre.
I mean, it really is a genre.
There's been so many of these sort of films and books over the last, something happens to a boomer, maybe health related, or maybe something else related.
Then they meet a baby tiger, and everything's okay.
And if they walk, they need to walk.
So it's worth thinking. So if I take you through the publishing process and where Penguin Random House, which my publishers would have been, so it's Michael Joseph, which is one of the imprints of Penguin Random House. When this came in on submission, you would buy it, I think, because of the story. You'd immediately, or you would certainly take a meeting. You kind of go, this is really, there's not a lot that gets sent into publishers where they go, I haven't read this before. And she can clearly write Raynor and Winn. I mean, it's not my cup of tea, but she's no Margaret's, it's uplifting and all of those things. So Raynor and Moth will come in. You will chat away. It will not be an enormous book. You're not thinking, oh my God, this is going to be the Salt Path.
Yeah.
This is going to sell 2 million copies. This is going to be a movie with Gillian Anderson and Jason Isaacs. You're definitely not thinking that. You're thinking, is this worth a £30,000 advance and some marketing money? It's probably what you're thinking at that stage.
I don't think you even need to pay 30, to be quite honest.
But that would be, if you really like it,
very well.
And you're thinking other publishers are going to look at this, other publishers are going to see that there's something in this. Now, the contract you sign, or the contract that the Winns would have signed, they take on all the indemnity for any lies that are in their account. So Penguin Random House, same with Hachette, HarperCollins, all of these companies, if you sign something like this, the onus is on the author to be telling the truth. There is nothing beholden on the publishers to have fact-checked this stuff. Okay, I mean, one imagines you would, and you'll certainly do some of your due diligence, but they do not have any legal issues because Raynor and Moth, or however they signed their contracts, one assumes, by the way, that the checks got sent to Tim and Sally Walker, but that's another thing. So they would have signed their contract, therefore everything is on them. They have said to Penguin Random House, to Michael Joseph, everything we've told you is true. And in the same way, when the movie rights are bought, and normally movie companies do quite a lot more due diligence because they're not paying £30,000 for something. They're paying.
And as I said, it's so weird. Something being on the screen is so different. I mean, I'm thinking I'm adapting something at the moment, and it would be so different. Even though in the book, if you can vaguely identify people, it doesn't matter. You've got to create completely new characters because it's too close.
So making a movie, you're spending millions. So you're spending 3-4 million probably. So at that point, you think maybe we do our due diligence, but also the place I'd like to be is inside the heads of Sally and Tim Walker when the movie deal gets made, because I think they probably got away with it with the book. They've done 2 follow-up books, which are Wild Silence and Landlines. Raynor Winn's got a very, very nice career. She's made millions. They've got a nice house down in Cornwall. In fact, in the second book, is based on the fact that a city trader read the first book, felt so sorry for them, he gave them a property in Cornwall to live in if they could rewild it for him. I'd love to chat to him.
You may well be hearing from
Yes,
this.
I imagine.
We're going to be hearing from lots more people on this story.
I'd like to have been in the head of Raynor Winn where they go, all this money, and you think, okay, this is going to be on the screen. We have got Gillian Anderson and Jason Isaacs. This is suddenly going to, it's interesting when you do a movie, it weirdly gets a lot more publicity than a book. So a book kind of sold forever and ever and ever and is much more lucrative than movies for an author. But when a movie comes out, there's a weird thing where you get elevated in traditional media. Okay,
but I'm not saying she has done this, but maybe if this isn't true, by this stage, the truth, how the truth, reality bending, that's what I'm talking about. The truth has sort of become that for you, and you think that that's exactly what happened. I think you sit still and safe, and I don't think you're worried, because if a person were to have got away with something or got away with not the whole truth, then I don't think you suddenly think, oh, this is going to become so much more exposing, because you're not really au fait with that whole world and the fact that it is going to become so much more exposing. And
also you've convinced yourself that you're telling your truth. And so whatever comes out, oh no, they could actually say, oh, is this true? And you go, no, but it's very vibes-based, my truth, which some people's truth is these days. But the second that it came out on screen, you could tell that the Observer, who'd done this amazing piece, I think, well, this is a much bigger story now. This was previously like a 7-year-old book, which had sold a load of copies, which had made a lot of book groups very, very, very happy, but was sort of passing into the ether. But now, bang, it's on the front pages again, and boy, is it on the front pages now with these revelations.
Well, it's only just starting as the week goes on, and you think back because you're thinking, how will it play out? And obviously, probably the most famous one in sort of recent decades has been James Frey's Million Little Pieces memoir, which that was famous. It went on Oprah's book club, and he was, and then it was found out to be mostly rubbish.
Yeah.
Some readers sued I think that was Random House in America. Readers sued them. I mean, I know you can sue anyone in America, but it's interesting because that's a different. There were other ones, but they haven't resulted in legal. Not all of them have resulted in. Sometimes there's counter memoirs, obviously.
By the way, the next book, if I was Gillian Anderson and Jason Isaacs, I'd be thinking, I know the movie I want to be in now.
Yeah, for definite.
Yeah.
I mean, and so the question is what you do at this stage. I mean, they're consulting lawyers. It's pretty difficult. There may be a sort of fudge where they say, we look forward and not back, and we don't want to go into the full details. Like everyone, we've made mistakes, and we made financial mistakes and what have you. And they could do that, but I think people are now just going to want to find out absolutely everything, and they want to have other people on the sofa, because right now you've seen, Raynor and Moth Winn many times. I've seen over the last few weeks because this film came out. And I think people are now just going to say, well, I don't understand. How could this possibly have been published? How could, they're going to say lots of things like that.
And I'm going to speak now to people who we're talking about Salt Path, and they'll say, I've literally never heard of this. And I think there's two interesting things about that. Firstly, we're talking about it because in publishing terms, it is a proper phenomenon.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the big sort of 10 books of the last 5 years or so. It's like, this huge thing that came from nowhere. It's made a huge amount of money for everybody. So in publishing, it's massive. And I'm fascinated by the amount of people, when you go online, who say, "Oh, so literally the first I've heard of this book." And I say this in publishing all the time, publishing meetings.
Yeah.
I said, it doesn't matter how much publicity you do, nobody has heard of any books. They just haven't. It's a thing. People who love books, it's like, professional golf. If you know about golf, you know all the players. If you don't know about golf, you don't know any of them. You go, Tiger Woods. And it's the same with books, so there's a huge amount of people who have never heard of this book, wouldn't dream of knowing it existed, might know, wasn't there a film with that title? There's a Gillian Anderson thing, but even that, mainly not, because, publicity doesn't cut through. And it will be fascinating to see the sales figures next week for this book.
Well, I've now bought it because I felt I had to have a look at it.
And by the way, every penny of that is still going to Raynor Winn and Moth Winn. It's very, very hard to give
maybe
an
they're
uptick.
creditors.
Yeah, maybe they're creditors eventually. It's very, very hard to give upticks to books that are 5 or 6 years old. A movie is one way of doing it. They give you a couple of months of, real kind of uplift in sales. But if you have a movie and then after the movie, a massive controversy where people are saying, "Oh my God, everything in this book is mental," then who doesn't want to read that? It suddenly becomes a very different reading experience. But the money is still the same. The money is still going to go to them.
Well, we'll catch up at some length, unspecified length, if only with the sales figures on that one next week. But as I say, that's going to be a really big story, and watch how it plays out and who first makes comment, who's first on the sofa. And we'll have take a look back at that next week.
But it's amazing as well how the phrases fact check and fat check sound so similar and yet are the exact opposite of each other.
And on that, I think we should go to a break.
We should. By the way, afterwards we're talking about more fakery, but we're also talking about a rare, good old-fashioned success story.
A real hit.
This podcast is brought to you by Sky Sports on Now.
If you're after gripping drama this summer with no script, limited health and safety measures and plot twists in gum shields, the British and Irish Lions are touring Australia.
3 tests, 6 warm-ups, a cast of battered heroes with more bandaged ears than a Van Gogh exhibition.
Now, the Lions is rugby at its most mythical, forged from folklore, fueled by rivalry, 4 nations, 6 weeks, 1 jersey, and unlike most franchises, this one comes round only once every 4 years.
And it's the first tour to Australia in 12 years. Expect packed stadiums, electric atmospheres, and kangaroo mascots that look like they've seen things. It's pure sporting theatre, and this time the curtain rises mid-morning.
Which, let's be honest, is the dream. No late kickoffs or caffeinated anthems, just a front row seat with breakfast from your sofa as 30 men audition for immortality.
It's not just a team, it is a temporary alliance of rivals chasing legacy.
You can catch every match live on Sky Sports, available to stream with Now.
Welcome back, everybody, after those unflinchingly honest adverts.
Yeah.
The world of music and the world of AI is a fascinating one, and it's been thrown into focus by this band, the Velvet Sundown, who are Gabe Farrow, Lenny West, Milo Raines, and Orion Rio Del Mar. Good-looking guys. You've seen pictures of them. It's entirely fake, so there's not a real human being. None of those people are real. The Velvet Sundown are not a real group. Every single thing there is done by giving a simple prompt into Suno, which is one of the AI music-making machines. The Velvet Sundown have gone bigger than any of these other AI bands, but there are huge amounts of them around at the moment. But a simple
They've
prompt.
got more than 800,000 streams on Spotify.
It's over 1 million now.
Is it?
Yeah.
They've put out 2 or 3 albums in the last month. Their artist blurb on Spotify, which was verified, used to say their sound mixes textures of 1970s psychedelic alt-rock and folk rock, yet it blends effortlessly with modern alt-pop and indie structures. There was a quote from Billboard on there, which, by the way, wasn't a quote from Billboard. This Billboard article never really existed, that said, they sound like the memory of something you never lived and somehow make it feel real. Now, in terms of like who they are or what it is, rather, because it's not, there is no they.
Yes.
But I feel like my own reactions to this are sort of like part of the story in some ways. You sort of want it to be an art hoax. You and that to me feels I'm part of a generation that wants someone to say, I've done this to say, and there was someone who came out and said, I'm their publicist, and then it turns out he's been debunked.
Lots of people, by the way, are claiming credit for this, which is the only funny bit of the story, which is everyone's going, oh no, this was me. I did this. And the real people are going, no, we faked it.
There's something about me that I want someone to say, there's a point to all of this. I'm trying to, make a point about this or that. But why does it have to be anything? Other people are saying, it's fine. It's good enough. I like listening to it.
I played it to your husband. We didn't tell him it was AI. And he was like, yeah, this is absolutely a piece of me. This is absolutely. But exactly it is because it said all the things that you like into an algorithm. And that's the music that it's come up with.
It's interesting. If you listen to one of the songs, which then I think it's much less, you really can't tell. And the mixing is so good. That's what I really noticed about this. Just the advances from stuff that I heard of AI music, honestly, about 3 months ago, and what you can hear now is that so quickly all of these things are being ironed out. And I really felt that all those little clues, really, they had ironed out very, very well. Yesterday, then I listened to the whole album. Yeah. And at that point, you were like, there's something weird. And it's hard to know. Maybe it's because, but there is something odd about it.
Lyrically, certainly.
Yeah. Actually, John Oliver did a thing on Last Week Tonight. His AI band he kept talking about was The Devil Inside. But again, they talk a lot about dust and wind. And I'm trying to work out whether, are they sort of slightly copying each other, these two AI bands? There are certainly already AI copies of the Velvet Sundown.
I mean, geez. Where do we go?
People are becoming angry because it's showing up on their Spotify playlist. They don't really know why. In the same way that Google are trying to sort of say, we're going to try and find a way of watermarking images that we've discovered to be AI. People are saying, well, why shouldn't you just do this? You've got to find a way to do this with music. And then there are other people who think, well, I mean, why? Why do you have to? Why can't you just have, ever since sort of Brian Eno or whoever came up with the idea of ambient music, saying, oh, this is just, you don't have to sort of actively listen. In fact, there was one composer, sort of 19th century composer who talked about making furniture music. Like you didn't have to sort of sit, it wasn't sit up music, it was lean back music.
So at the moment, the Velvet Sundown are on Spotify and they're not labelled as AI and they're verified. Deezer have said, who are streaming rivals to Spotify, have said, we put it through our algorithm, we are confident it's 100% AI generated. And certainly nothing that's happened in the real world would suggest that it isn't. Their latest figures say 18% of the music that people try to upload to it is entirely AI generated.
The other thing I was thinking about when I was listening to this on Spotify was how much of this is like bots listening to this AI thing and it just becomes a sort of weird advertising transaction.
Well, that's the thing. So there's money to be made on Spotify. We know it's a very, very small amount of money that you make on advertising services if you're a band. If you're a record company, you're making a fortune from these places, but not bands. And we'll get onto the record company question in a minute because that's an interesting one. So if lots of us will go onto Spotify or whatever streaming service and you will have those Discover playlists, which will be, a mix of new music, old music, stuff that we know the algorithm tells us you like already. A really useful way of hearing old music and finding new music as well. Now, the Velvet Sundown are on a number of those playlists and some other big playlists as well. So to get onto a Discover playlist, it does actually cost you money. Yeah. So if you're a band or if you're a record company, you want to promote something, you can get placed on one of these playlists and you get a smaller royalty, smaller than you're getting already to go on a Discover playlist. Spotify are very open as well. This is all there in their terms and conditions. They'll say, look, people have to like it as well. People have to engage with it and enjoy it, and then it will, go further and further up our various charts. But if you want to be on this these Discover playlists, this is something that will cost you, and that's something that Velvet Sundown have clearly done, and people have liked this music as well. But the interesting thing, of course, is if you are, say, Shed 7. Okay, and Shed 7 have got all their music on Spotify, and a lot of their stuff will get on Discover playlists because it's popular. So they wouldn't necessarily have to be paying to be on these things. But if you're Shed 7 and you're getting your very, very small amount of money per song, per stream, then your management company is going to have to pay all of you from that. And your management company is going to have to take their bit, and the record company is going to have to take their bit. If you have sat down and made an AI thing, then nobody is getting paid apart from you. if Spotify say to you, you can get a smaller royalty on this, you think, great, I haven't done it. I literally done nothing. These things, you can make these songs in 30 seconds. Velvet Sundown feels like it's something that they've spent a little bit longer perhaps on, but you can make these things incredibly quickly and sit back and watch the money come in. You can have things, and again, Spotify absolutely say we have our eye on this stream farms, which are these depressing sheds all around the world, which are just hundreds, thousands of tablets and phones all streaming the same thing at the same time to bump your numbers up, because, even if you're getting 0.01 pence per stream, it adds up eventually. So there are ways of grifting this system. There are ways of using that system. And there are certainly ways, if you can sit at home, come up with a new song, put it on Spotify, put it on other streaming things, and have 1,000 phones listening to it at the same time. There's money to be made there. Again, if we go back to Deezer, they are suggesting that in this sort of feedback loop of AI made for AI, sometimes up to 70% of those streams are bots listening to bots. We talk a lot about, can AI make movies? Can AI write books? And those slightly longer form things, it feels harder. But there is a lot about music, especially, as you say, sit back music, that is a vibe. Yeah. And the one thing AI is very, very, very good at is a vibe. It's going, I know the sort of thing you mean, this sort of thing. And you go, yes, it is that sort of thing. And unless somebody takes a stand at some point and labels every single one of these things when it comes through, we are going to be awash with it. It is going to be absolute slop. And I'd be interested to know your view about where that takes us. Let's just take music, because the films and novels, I suspect, are going to come to this place in about 18 months' time. But music as a test case for AI just absolutely flooding the market. What does that mean for us as consumers, and what does it mean for a 22-year-old in a band right now working your socks off to write music?
Are you just another job that's getting replaced by AI? Because humans are annoying. I mean, people in bands are definitely annoying.
Yes.
That's the whole point of them.
Listen, I grew up with one and I love him, but
Eliminating those pesky humans from that particular money-making opportunity is, you can see the appeal immediately, but you can also see just the volume of it and how it's really easy for the whole tide of that, and how it obviously takes a long time to create things. Well, sometimes everyone says, I wrote this song in 15 minutes, it finally just came out. But there are not that many songs that are like that, and there's certainly not careers that happen like that. And we also know that, people, this idea that, oh no, humans will find you out, and they'll humans can find meaning in, a piece of toast that looks like it's got the face of Jesus on it.
We are designed to find meaning in anything.
In any old thing.
Yeah, to see faces on trees, to find meaning in the Velvet Sundown.
To see ourselves in all sorts of things, and they can definitely see themselves in the Velvet Sundown. As always with these sort of things where it's a bit of a crapshoot, and maybe people like it, maybe they won't, is the flooding of it. People will flood the marketplace. It's not like some things will try, some will work, they might be quite good, doesn't really matter, and we're all debating whether or not it's a pastiche or a satire on ourselves or whatever it is. It's actually just the sheer volume. In a funny kind of way, it reminds me of that, that's the idea that most of the traffic on the world's internet now is, whatever the percentage, it's gone way over 60%. It's just things like, vending machines talking to each other, and like, have you got a smart coffee cup? Why is my coffee cup smart? Why is my toaster smart?
I like the idea of vending machines talking to each other.
I like that idea.
I'd like to think about what their problems are.
But the idea,
because if we're talking about vending machines, we're like, I hate it when the thing gets stuck. But from the vending machine's perspective, that'd be very different, because they'd be like, I hate it when something gets stuck because I can see someone's frustrated.
Someone's
but also,
kick me.
I've got it itches.
Yeah.
I can feel it's there and I can't do anything. So actually, I'm interested in what vending machines say. That's a novel.
Yeah. I mean, you've made something rather beautiful out of that.
Yeah,
but I think
you.
Actually what the vending machines talking to each other is...
But we will find meaning in anything.
Yeah,
That's
we
the
will.
point.
And I will anthropomorphize it as them talking to each other.
Yeah.
They're not talking to each other, okay? But yes, I think that the sheer volume that floods things means it's harder and harder to find things. And it's harder to find connections with those things which we say that take a long period of time to make, that are faltering, that require refinement or anything like that. If you can refine in a millisecond, some people are saying, I'm really angry with Spotify about this because they don't make it clear. I think there will be some kind of premium to be had for people who really feel that they would be being lied to if this sort of thing wasn't clearly labelled as such. But actually, the majority of people, just as the majority of people get the news app that's on their phone and are quite happy with whichever one comes bundled free with whichever type of phone they've got, they're quite happy to listen to lots of this stuff. And again, it's odd because, as I said, when we were talking about the sort path, people are obsessed with authenticity, but they are and they aren't. So they're obsessed with it, but they're actually going to be quite happy, not to mind.
The AI has an authenticity, which is this is AI. This is a machine, and so as long as you're not pretending it's real human beings and people, that has an authenticity. If I can strike a positive note, it would be this, which is I do think in the same way. Listen, I don't want to hark on about the Industrial Revolution all the time, but in the same way that if you can mechanize the production of something, then 50 to 100 years later, someone who can actually do it with their bare hands becomes incredibly valuable. There's a premium on artisans. And I do think there comes a point where people who properly love music, proper music fans, I'm a sidelines music fan, but proper music fans, there will be a huge premium on human-made music, I think. And there will be a huge premium on going to see human-made music. And I think that people will start to appreciate human-made music a little bit more as well. It's already a huge
premium. It's very expensive.
Yeah. But so bands, even now, the way they make the money is touring. So they're no longer making music, selling records. And it is harder for an AI band to tour. Absolutely doable, completely possible, but less fun because, it's okay listening to the Velvet Sundown if it's in the background and everyone's chatting. If you're actually having to sit in a stadium, you are kind of going, oh, this is sort of awful, isn't it? So I do hope and I think that for bands who play live and make and write their own music, there will be a huge premium for that. I think the really interesting thing is the people who are trying to sue are the record companies. Because the real story of the Spotify years and the streaming years is that the record companies have not lost a penny. The record companies are still making an absolute fortune. It's just they're not giving as much money of that money to the bands that they sign. So the record companies are in a nice place now where they're going, oh, we're still getting all of this money. We've done all these deals. We're not having to pay our workers as much as we used to. And the record companies are now saying, oh, wait a minute, Spotify are now putting these songs on where no one gets paid. It doesn't go through a record company. So we are completely taken out of that equation because what we do is manage talent and this manage computers, which is what's happening. So the record companies are launching lawsuits against a lot of these AI streamers and things like that. So it feels like if I was 21 and in a band, you're like kind of banging your head against the wall. You hope that this whole thing, and I think this in lots of areas, this whole thing, the market becomes so saturated so quickly with slop, which is what we've seen in a lot of journalism and things like that, that actually this desire to find some truth and to find some human connection will become more and more powerful. So in the same way that New York Times and Guardian and the Observer that we talked about earlier, they see numbers go up and up and up because people are desperate for a genuine human connection and desperate for something that hasn't been written by a machine. You hope that that's what happens in music as well, but it's going to be a bumpy ride for the next few years.
Will happen, and you hope it happens with enough people. But you also sort of have to acknowledge that many, perhaps the majority, really would be quite happy to read an AI-generated article about an AI band and listen to the AI music.
Most of the money in the world,
just be part of an advertising transaction.
But most of the money in the world, most of the cultural money in the world, doesn't come from those people. Most of the cultural money in the world comes from early adopters who love something, comes from fans. And those fans, will still seek a human connection. That's not something that bands have ever massively been able to monetize anyway. They want people who genuinely like what they do and like them as human beings. Look at this massive Oasis tour and making, hundreds of millions. Now, I love Oasis. Oasis's lyrics could be written by AI. They've never said, look, we're the greatest lyricists in the world. Some of the chord sequences and stuff that could be written by AI, but you could not invent Oasis in AI. You couldn't invent the history of that group. You couldn't invent those guys and how they interact with each other. That is something you can't invent, and that is something that people will pay for forever and ever and ever. You just hope that there are enough people still willing to pay for things and who
pay 400 quid
and take just take the love of human beings, do something extraordinary that they don't need to do but are doing just to entertain you. That would be where I would err on the side of optimism. But my God, there's going to be an awful lot of this coming on. At the very beginning, we played the Velvet Sundown. Now, if you're listening to this and go, oh, you didn't play the Velvet Sundown, we are currently talking about whether we can or not, which seems ridiculous because it's made up. It's just a machine, but, it has publishers and this, that, the other, and, putting music on things. We have done our own just to show what can be done. I just said, I literally just went into Suno. I said, I want a landfill indie band from the 2000s. I asked ChatGPT what they should be called, and ChatGPT said they should be called The Quiet Alibi. And I said, give me the sort of song that the Kooks would have written. And they said, how about Rewind the Summer? So this is, and this took, I'm going to say 45 seconds. This is The Quiet Alibi with Rewind the Summer.
Your voice was heat in a motel room, vinyl slow dancing under the moon. Time pulled the thread, but I still feel tight. Your silhouette burned in the porch light. Let's rewind the summer, slow and rough. Trace every curve, we couldn't get enough. Back to the night, your hands knew mine.
Let's rewind the summer, one more lie. Listen, it's terrible. But, so is almost all music I liked when I was 16.
One thing we did discover was that it just can't handle a British accent.
Doesn't like British accents. But
Can't do one. Yeah.
But, a lot of British singers in the 2000s like to have a slight transatlantic accent anyway. So I think we got away with it. But, you can sort of make it do anything. And it's profoundly awful. There's going to be an awful lot more of it to come. But I do think it places a premium on people who can really do it, and let's hope it does anyway. And perhaps we'll put the whole of that on after the final adverts on this thing. We'll put the whole of Rewind the Summer by The Quiet Alibi.
Yes, but for now, let's just accept that humans are becoming a prestige product. And
yeah, I mean that's sort of a good way of thinking about it. And also, let's pitch the vending machines. Meet cute.
That actually that was lovely.
Yeah, I'm all out of Revels. Oh, I have plenty of Revels. Can you get Revels still in a vending machine?
Oh, yeah. If you can't.
I don't think I've seen Revels in a vending machine for many. That sounds like an AI reminiscence. I don't think I have seen Revels in a vending machine for many years. If you have seen Revels in a vending machine at home, please send in a picture. See, that's human interaction.
Via the internet.
AI wouldn't do that. Yeah, via the internet. Talking of humans as a premium product, can we talk about Hot Ones?
Oh, please. Let's talk about Hot Ones, which is a YouTube interview series. And the premise of it is, it was created by a guy called Chris Schomburger, but it's presented by a guy called Sean Evans. And he interviews a celebrity, and the questions are fantastic. We'll come to that in a minute. But celebrities have to answer questions while eating progressively spicier chicken wings with various hot sauces. And that is it. It's a very, very basic set. It's 2 black tables with some jugs of water and milk or whatever, you can bring along various things. And Sean Evans asks the guests questions. And it started, they used to get not very good people on. And now they get huge stars. They get anyone they want, really. They've had, in the last 6 months, they have Lady Gaga, Selena Gomez. They can get anyone they want.
Will Ferrell's done it, Billie Eilish. I mean, it is for every PR. This is the stop. This is one of the ones that it would be absolutely, whenever you do any sort of PR thing, there's like a list of places to hit. This is number one on every A-list celebrities PR list, wish list. They
turned down Kamala Harris in the presidential election campaign because they just thought, oh no, we don't really want to get into politics. And it's just become a huge thing. And the moments from it go viral all the time, and we can perhaps come to why that is in a bit. But why are we talking about them this week?
Well, we're talking about it because, I grew up in the format business and, grew up in a world where, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and Weakest Link and all these things travel the world, and something had to be on a terrestrial television channel. And Hot Ones started somewhere very differently. So 2015, as you'll know, anyone who worked in sort of publishing or magazines or newspapers, everyone decided they had to pivot to video. This was the thing. Everyone wants video. We have to pivot to video, and we have to set up our own little studio and do this, that, or the other. And it came from a site called First We Feast, Chris Schomburg, as you say. So why don't we do like a thing where people have to eat, hot wings of increasing strength? Sean Evans, who's working there, said, "Oh, I love that. Let's do it." Did a couple of series where it was mainly sort of rappers and sports stars. Yeah. Sean Evans would always wanted to be a a sports reporter. So they did this for a while. The episode that made them really big, and you can find this on YouTube, it's very good, is Key and Peele, the American comics. They did one. It was very, very, very funny, and people immediately, the discomfort in eating the hot wings, you can always tell with an episode of Hot Ones when people have trouble with the first one, it's going to be a good episode because by the time we're on the 10th one, I mean, it's absolutely crazy. So it is now this format that's had, I think, 370 odd episodes, had billions upon billions of views, 2.6 billion views, I think, and they have 3 seasons a year with about 10 to 15 episodes. What does it tell us about television? Well, I think it tells us that format, the one thing people always said is there's no formats on YouTube. It's just people, talking and, playing FIFA and, unboxing things. And actually, this is a thing. Sean Evans, I find a very interesting guy. Firstly, he's a very, very good interviewer. So
the research is actually brilliant. By the way, his brother does the research mostly.
Oh, does he?
They do a lot of it together, but his brother Gavin does a lot of the research, and the questions are really, really good. Sometimes quite left field, but they do make the people go deep as well. And I mean, people really like being on the show, despite the physical discomfort.
And that thing of when people hear about a format, they go, oh God, who wants to watch that? Just people eating 10 hot wings. And of course, that is not what it is about. That just drags you in because it's quite an interesting thing. But actually sitting there and doing something else while you're being interviewed makes you a more interesting interviewee and allows Sean Evans to go to places.
But also we're in a physical challenge kind of culture era, and there's something about that, and there's something about the silliness of it that people like. But it is also a producer of endless reaction
memes,
gifs, memes,
and
everything.
10-second clips. But Sean Evans is a lover of broadcast television. So Sean Evans talks a lot. He talks about growing up watching TV and growing up watching late night television and growing up watching those hosts and saying how at home they made him feel and how safe they made him feel and how happy they made him feel, and families watching TV and stuff like that. And he said right from the beginning, I wasn't thinking, I'm going to do a sort of wacky YouTube thing. I wanted to do something that really, really connected with people. Yeah. It goes through YouTube because that's where he was, and it goes through, First We Feast. And the very fact that he'll do 3 seasons a year and there'll be like 10 to 13 episodes a year, he does it like broadcast TV.
It comes out on a Thursday in a sort of 20 to 30 minute segment.
Releases them every Thursday, exactly that. And he's spoken in the last few years about, why am I not up for Emmys? He hasn't said exactly that. He said, but I feel I should be I should be competing on the same level with these guys.
He has been now nominated for an Emmy, and the show has been nominated for an Emmy as well.
Yeah, they've been nominated for a couple of daytime Emmys.
Oh, yeah, daytime.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, I've been nominated for daytime Emmys. Yeah. So it's a really, really lovely show, made by someone who loves making it, with a funny format and with great interviews as well. And recently, BuzzFeed bought First We Feast, but Sean Evans and Chris Schomburg and various other people, including the Pod Save America people and George Soros, have recently bought it back. So they bought it for $82.5 million. So Sean Evans now sort of has a lot more control over it. And I just think it's, in a changing media landscape, and, I work in a business where lots of people are finding work difficult to come by, and to have a show like this that really is reaching family audiences, that is reaching big audiences, that is made with skill, that is lit properly, presented properly, researched properly. It feels like that's a new frontier. They recently sold the format to Germany, so there's a German comic is now doing the German Hot Ones, and you know what? That's the business I understand. That's the business I recognise. So this is the first time I really, really can see something that's come from YouTube that is doing exactly what
But equally,
my
you
generation
mentioned the
grew up with.
lighting, whatever. But actually, what I would also say is the business that you recognise when you were talking about selling formats, maybe it had a shiny floor, maybe it was high production values. What's funny about their set is that it's, as I say, these 2 black tables. And what was great about that was that they could go to where the stars were.
Yeah.
You didn't have to say, we need to have you onto our set, unfortunately. It's like, because then they can't do it. But that's the most lo-fi thing in the whole world, just this very basic thing that they can set up anywhere. And therefore, you are much more likely to get guests on different tours and what have you. But I think that's really interesting that when I think of like selling a format, you did think of those, whether it was Love Island or Millionaire or whatever, those kind of things, those big things, and they kind of look the same with a couple of little local things, but they were expensive. And now you're just selling kind of almost like you're selling a meme.
A table with a black
Yeah, it's
cloth.
it's a sort of cultural IP, really.
Yeah, when we sold Total Wipeout around the world, we literally had to send everyone to Argentina because we could only afford to build the course once.
Yeah.
So like every country was like a timeshare, and people go out for 2 weeks at a time. Whereas this, I just wanted to talk about it because I just think it's really well made.
It is amazing made. The questions are absolutely brilliant. That vibe that you said that he wants it to be kind of warm and whatever. He said he wants it to feel like, to feel like watching Friends, just in terms of the warmth and what have you. But equally, there's lots of very modern things to it, that it's kind of very live stream friendly, and you can obviously talk about things at it welcomes on interactivity, it welcomes spin-off. Obviously there's a huge amount of sources that have come off this.
I mean, that's the thing, is immediately they've got these massive selling sources. Like the first source the first chicken wing in every single episode is the classic one, and they can sell that. And the last one in every episode, number 10, which, I mean, the amount of people who have to walk out of this show crying at various points, or the amount of people who cuss him out because of the pain, the sheer physical pain they're in, is extraordinary. The last one is called The Last Dab. Yeah. And again, that's something you can buy as well. So it's I just feel like it's a creative person. Well, and Chris Schomburg and Sean Evans, I think it's some creative people who've done something brilliant and are being rewarded for it. And I wouldn't see any reason why he would not be up for the big Emmys against the big late night hosts, because this feels like it has something.
I agree.
Different.
Even a few months ago, only a few months ago, when this show is already a complete phenomenon and what have you, though, he said, "I'm really tired of explaining to advertisers that an eyeball on YouTube is just the same as an eyeball on TV." And he said, and I think that's really interesting, that there is still a sort of, on linear TV I'm talking about, that there is still a kind of reticence on behalf of many, many advertisers to see this for what it is, whereas the ones who've gone ahead are actually doing very well out of it.
If you've not watched it, you can watch it with your kids. Pick a celebrity you like, or pick a celebrity you don't know. That's one of the other fun things about it, is it's very American. So sometimes there are people on, you go, I don't know who you are, but I like you. Yeah. And it's just, you'll see a very smart presenter and a very smart producer doing a format that's funny, doing a format that just delivers time and time again, and is an interview show that you haven't quite seen before. And this doesn't replace what we're watching on linear TV. It doesn't replace all these brilliant formats that are going around the world, but it absolutely has its place at the top table. And I just think it's impressive given where it came from and where it is now. And it'll be the first of many, I think. It's
got a lot in common, actually, with some of those kind of late night sections that are designed for virality, like, Day Drinking with Seth Meyers or Carpool Karaoke, as was. Those sort of things that are designed to sort of be almost standalone, although they come in the format of traditional linear television. This is like one of those just on its own.
Well, that's the funny thing, is all of those late night shows realised a while ago they had to have these big viral moments. So let's do our carpool karaoke, day drinking, whatever it is. And our culture is such that people are like, what if you did something that was just that? Because actually that's the best bit. So why don't you let's just do that. So Hot Ones is just the viral bit from someone else's show. And they just go, no, but we'll just do that. It's just...
Well, that's what people talk about on YouTube, isn't it? That it's like frameworks rather than formats, and that you'll say, okay, like a Get Ready With Me video is a framework. And anyone you can say, so that as soon as you see it, you think, oh, I know roughly the sort of thing I'm watching. And something that could be like... Hot Ones, which is you're thinking, okay, there's an element of physical challenge. It's a step. It's progressively gets harder and harder, and either they're being interviewed or something. You can see in the same way that sort of Chicken Shop Date, which isn't the same thing, but you roughly know what you're dealing with, and you're thinking, oh, okay, it's and they're becoming the new genres.
As the great Swedish philosophers Roxette said, "Don't bore us, get to the chorus." And that's one of the things I like about our accelerated culture these days, is we get to the good bits very, very quickly. And YouTube has just gone, no, we are cutting immediately into the good bit. And the second the good bit is finished, we're cutting out.
Any recommendations, Richard?
Yes, we talked a lot about fakery, haven't we? So let's continue to celebrate human beings. I want to recommend Death Valley, the new BBC One murder mystery thing with Gwyneth Keyworth and Tim Spall, who are both absolutely brilliant. And it's and the BBC on a run of form with these after Ludwig as well, but it's a very, very charming murder mystery, detective duo thing. And it's if you like Ludwig and you like that sort of thing, you'll absolutely love it. And honestly, Gwyneth Keyworth and Tim Spall are incredible in it.
Oh, I've got to watch this. Okay, thank you.
Human beings. Thank you, human beings, for everything you do.
Yeah.
Everything you continue to do.
Now, we are back on Thursday with a questions and answers episode.
We are indeed. We have an interesting bonus episode this week as well, which is I just finished filming 110 episodes of House of Games. So our producer
Thanks
Joey,
for your service.
That's a pleasure. Our producer Joey came up and interviewed everyone on the show about what a day in the life of House of Games is like. So it's how a show like that is put together, all the different people in all the different departments and what they do. So that will be our bonus episode.
I love that episode,
on
by the way.
Friday.
It's terrific. If you want to sign up for our club, it's thereestisentertainment.com. Otherwise, we will be back as completely as normal with our questions and answers on Thursday.
On Thursday, all human made.
You were July, like a second skin assault on your